Here we go. Perticus, nuntiato salitium adventu. Adventus with the arrival of the messenger, or when it was announced the arrival satellitum of the satellites, or these messages that were sent. Se decum, which is 16 in Latin. Omnino, altogether. Purus, looks ablative, regia cohortis comitatus. Okay, so Perticus comitatus means he was accompanied with 16 boys of the royal cohorts in limine domus sue constitit. 3 T's in a row, which are very alliterative, which is difficult to say. In the limine is the doorway, basically, or threshold of his house. He halted or he stood there. Castigatos qui, that's plural accusative, and having castigated them, it's a past passive. So they've been castigated, which is reproached, or this thing. And maliga mancipia, which is a neuter of mancipium. Identitam, which time and again it's a adverb. Appellans, so he's now doing appellensing them, which is a present participle. So he's castigated them and calling them repeatedly, time again, the mancipium of maliga, which is a formal possession or a slave, most likely. So he was calling them slaves because it's plural. Remember, it was a neuter of maliga. Sic thus, animae voltus qui constantia terruit. So here he is terrifying Constantia with his steadfastness, his constantia of mind and bearing, or of looks. Animus is also courage and heart, etc. Ut vix, so that scarcely mentis compotes mentis, as we know, is altogether being sound in the brain, and fugurant, so they fled, scarcely having their acts together. Perticus, nominative. Puros equos, accusative plurals. Usit, it takes the infinitive, so Perticus is ordered, usit, accusative infinitive, the boys to consendere the equos, to climb aboard the horses, not for the horses, to climb aboard the boys, and et cum with porcus amicorum, with a few of his friends, which is genitive, ad Leonatum pervenit. So he reached Leonatus. He went there. Iam firmiore praesidio. And now, in the ablative, with a firma praesidio, which is a protection or a group, vim propulsaturus. It's a future, so to propel, to force, sequis, if anyone should inferit some vim. So if anyone was bringing in a force, they would now have a more firmer garrison or protection in which they could reject it. Posterior die, the next day, indigna res, Macedonius videbor. So the next day, it seemed, videbator, and indigna res, a indignant matter, or a shameful happening, to the Macedonians, seemed to them, perdicam, in the accusative, ad mortis periculum adductim. So perdicam, with these apposition in adductum, so Perticus has been led ad periculum, which is an accusative, to the danger of death. So you might want to say, next day it sent the Macedonians, a shameful matter that Perticus had been led somewhere where there was a danger of death to him. Et maligri temeritatem, so this rashness or unpredictability of maliga, armis ultum ire decreverant. So they decided, ire to go, armis, armed, ultum. So they're going, and with this supine here, for revenge, if that's what it is. At qui illi, and he, here we go, this is spelt wrong, it should be seditione, provisa, this is an ablative absolute. Oh. So in he, provisa means to see in front, so to foresee, having seen this sedition or revolution, it's seen in advance or predicted it. Cum regem adisset, so this is when he had came, ad ad means towards, and I, as you know, means to go, and this is pluperfect subjunctive going with the cum. So when he had gone to the king, interrogare eum copit, he began, taking the infinitive, to interrogate him, or asking him, and whether perdicam comprehendi ipse usisit, whether he had ordered himself, ipsi, to comprehend, to apprehend, to grab Perdiccas. And sometimes that M there, that's an M instead of an N usually. It's an alternate spelling. Ille, he the king, maliga instinctu, se jus esse respondit. So respondit's another head verb, now into a right ugly. So he responded that say he, jus esse, he had ordered by the instinctu of maliga, with the provoking of maliga, or what do you call it? Instigation, if you want to use the INST bit. Ceterum non debere tumultavore eos perdicam enem vivere. Another short sentence. Okay, so ceterum, but eos, they ought, non debere, they ought not, deberes ought not, taking an infinitive, cause a tumultuare, make a big disturbance, or make a big thing out of it. Perdicam, for Perdiccas vivere, was living. And then we see that's just part of Moradia oblique. Igitor, therefore, contione dimissa, with the assembly dismissed, maliga in the nominative, equitum, genitive, maximum defectione per territus. So here's our word going from maliga. Maliga was very terrified, per territus, especially Maxime, with the defection of his knights, of his cavalry, the equitum, in opsque concilia, and in ops, so he was lacking, or he's basically out of plans. He didn't have a decent plan, is what it's saying. Concilii, quipi, sense, in ipsum periculum recideret, since he had reciderated, he had fallen into the danger, ipsi, himself. Quod, which, inimbique to his enemy, paulo ante, a little before intenderet. He'd aimed or intended a little before for his enemy. So he'd fallen into the same danger which he'd intended for his enemy a little before. Triduum fere. 3 days is triduum. Fere is same as fermi, it just means almost. Consumpsit. So almost 3 days was consumpted, consumed, taken up. Inserto concilia volvende, by the rolling over of incertain plans. So this is rolling over in his mind, obviously. He's using this gerund in the ablative. So it used up almost 3 days rolling over a plan which he was uncertain of. Et pristina quidem. Quidem just means indeed or even. And so indeed, pristina regie species manabat. So the former species, pristina and species, means so the former appearances of the palace of the royal court, the regia, indeed, was manabat and was remaining. Nam, for, et, also, legatae, looks plural for the legates, delegates, embassies, adibant, they were present, the king, regentium of all the races, so legates of all the races were here present with the king. Adibant comes from adsum, and copiarum duces aderant. Adibant, they're going to the king in the accusative, and aderant here, and the leaders of the forces were present. It's got the I there. And the vestibulum satellites armatiqui con pleverant. And so the vestibule, this is just an area called the vestibule. It's probably the same thing in English as the Latin. It was compleveranted. It was filled up with satellites again and armed men. So these are the people in the orbit around these gentlemen were the satellites. So they were just assistants basically. Sed ingens, which means huge. So, but there was a huge sua sponte of its own accord. Maius ditia, first declension, that means gloom basically, but there was huge gloom of its own accord. Ultimae desperationis index erat. index comes from an index finger, which you use to point at things. So it was an indication, basically. So this huge gloom of the ultimate desperation. This was index was a witness, basically, is what you'd say. Okay, we'll have a daily dictionary. Maius ditia. Gender female, with the first declension, pretty simple, it's not irregular, top 10,000 words. Dullness, gloom, sadness, sorrow, grief, source of grief. Okay. Suspecti qui, and suspecting, the I means it was plural, so there's plural people suspecting. Invecem's an adverb, means in turn. Non adire proprius, not to go closer. Non colloquy, not to have conversations. Audibant, this is where we're getting our infinitives from. So, and they were suspecting in turn, but they were not daring to go closer nor to speak, probably to each other. Secretus cogitations, so secret cogitation just means thinking. So they were secretly thinking over things, intrae, amongst themselves. Quoque also volvente, so volventing again, that's a present participle, so again, it's just rolling things over in the mind amongst themselves. And ex comparation, again, this is comparison, that N could easily be an M. From comparisons, regis nova, of a new king, desiderium, this is a longing, basically, or missing something, was excitabator amissae. So, in comparison of the new king, was exciting, stirring up desiderium, a longing of the one they missed, amissae, the one they had lost. Ubi, with a V, when, Eli, he, esset, who had been or who was, cuis imperium, of whose was giving the orders, cuis auspicium secuta orent. Okay, so when he who secuta orent, who they were following, of his power and of his auspices, requirabant, they were searching for him. So they were searching for this guy who they were following in the power. So this is a king. Destitutos se inter. They were destitute. They were on their own, basically. They were maybe abandoned. Inter infestas indomitas qui gentes. Amongst infestas is hostile. Indomitus means they were unconquered. They haven't been dominated. They haven't been beaten into submission. So they've been destitute amongst hostile and indomitable races. Expetituras, okay, so we've got the AS and the AS. So these are unconquered people would be expeturing. They would be seeking totsuarum cladium poenas. Of so many cladiums of suarum of themselves, so many disasters of their own, poenas is the punishment. So these hostile and indomitable races would be expetituring, they would be seeking punishment for so many disasters. Quandoque, and when oblata est occasia, okay, when the occasion was oblated, was brought to them. So if they got the occasion to get their revenge, they would seek punishment. Here's cogitation So these cogitations, these thoughts, animos ex edabanting, imperfect, so they were eating away the animos, the minds. So these kind of thoughts were eating away their minds or their thoughts. Cum, I think this is when, ad nuntiator, when it was announced, the equites, these are the cavalrymen, the knights, qui sub Perdiccas, who were under Perdiccas, occupatus circa Babylonia campus, frumentum, who occupied the plains, the campuses around Babylonia. The frumentum quod in urbum viabat, so this is the grain, is the frumentum, which was being viabat into the city, which was being carried. Viabat means carried. Retinuisi, okay. So it was announced that the cavalry were retinuissing, they were holding back this grain which was being carried into the city. So what's going on here? Itiqui, and so accordingly, inopia primum. So first there was an inopia, there was a lack, and deinde then, famous essay, there was famine. Famous means there's no food. Remember, had been retained or detained this frumentum which they needed. Copit. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's why there's SA. SA is coming from this began. Copit takes an infinitive. Et qui in urbe rent, and those who are in the city, aut reconciliandam, this is a gerundive, with perdica gratiam, aut armas curtandum esse censibet, they were thinking. Okay, so those who are in the urb, in the city, ought either they should reconcile with Perdiccas, gratiam into the favours, in the Perdiccas's favour, cum Perdiccas, so that would be ablative. So they thought they should be reconciled to the favours of Perdiccas, or to curtandum, means to have the contest out with him. Armis is ablative, with their arms, sensibet, they were thinking. Forte, by chance, ita acciderit. So by chance it happened that, ita ut, that qui in agris erant, those who are in the agris, those who are in the fields, populationem villarum vicorum qui veriti. So again, the I here means it's plural. This is a supine past passive form. So this qui, those who were in the fields, they were verifying, they were fearing the depopulation, or the, what do you call it, when they ravaged the land of the villas and the villages, vicorum, they configuranted into the city. So they fled, con usually means together, they fled together into the city. The oppidani, which means townspeople, cum ipsos alimenta deficient, with those themselves who are deficient, they were lacking of alimenta, things that would nourish them. I think we're almost done here. Yeah, the sentence goes down here. Urbe in agros and utriqui genere tutior alienator sed quam sua videritor. So urbe means from the city, in agros into the fields. This is the oppidani. The townspeople went from the city or the town into the fields. And utriqui means both sides, generi of, it usually means a race of people. I think it means both classes. Tutior, it was safer. Alien, says, in other people's seats or houses, quam, than their own, videritor, it seemed. Quorum constantionem Macedonis veriti. So the Macedonians, veriti, fearing, again the I is plural, the consternation, or these troubles, quorum of those people, the people who have just gone in the fields, coeont in regia, they were compelled to or forced into the royal quarters, the regiam, quaeque ipsorum sententia esse exponent. And so which these people, their sententias, which is their sentiments, their views, or how they were feeling, they exponent, they placed these out, they put it out so it could be seen. Ipsorum, of their own thoughts, they exposed what they were thinking. Placabat, it was pleasing, or it was decided, autem moreover, legatos ad equities mitai, to be sent. So it was decided that legates or delegates or embassies would be sent to the cavalry, to these horsemen, at de finienda discordia, and making an end of the discord, armis qui ponendis, and of putting down. Ponendis is placing down these gerundatives, placing down their arms. So it was decided that they would send these delegates to the horsemen and the knights, and making an end of this discord and this civil strife in the arms, and putting down their arms. Igitor, therefore, a rege by the king, legator, was picked, passus thalasus. So this would be, that's where he lives. He's a Thessalian. And a messus, in the A manuscript, it's a messus. In the Loeb, we've got Demalius. So if that is a messus, it wouldn't be a capital A anyway. So Passus of Thessalian and Demilcius of Megopolis and Pyrrhaeus, if you want those proper nouns.